start with introducing myself. I'm Will, and I've created this channel, the Esoteric Cross, on YouTube, where esoteric knowledge. We'll talk about mysticism, the occult, tarot, Kabbalah, ceremonial magic, and really all kinds of things, astrology, astrotheology, connections within religions. The reason that I got into this stuff to begin with was because I was really, really interested in symbolism, what things mean, why things are placed in certain places, especially when it comes to the entertainment industry and all kinds of stuff. I was just really curious as to why they use certain symbolism. So that pulled me into the world of the occult, and I was really shocked at what I found, which has a lot to do with personal power, the way consciousness works, the way that we operate, and how we can gain control of it and the manipulation of it. So this led to me creating the channel, and now I teach courses in Kabbalah and Tarot, them together. I teach a course in ceremonial magic. Also, I do want to say the way that I use tarot is a bit more of a practical approach. As you get in touch with my intuition, that is definitely a part of tarot. But when I do a tarot reading, I usually center it around the growth of the person, their spiritual growth, their transformation, where they want to go and how they can get to where they want to go. Because the story of tarot, the cards laid out, tells you the story of the soul and its journey and its progression throughout an ascension process in consciousness, and also so if we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. We're going to talk about the history very briefly. Tarot was invented in, well, as far as we know, it was invented in the 1400s, and it was not used for divination. It was used as a card game for the elite. And that's the key is for elite. This occult information was usually held by people in status and people in power for a very long time. So it's no surprise that they used these cards for the elite to play with. The design was very different. Some of the cards look almost exactly identical to the Rider-Waite deck, but some of these cards were very different. Like, for example, that's the Sun card there in the middle, very different than the Rider-Waite deck. We have the child holding the head of the sun, which is a symbol for the resurrection.
Do you want to explain what the Rider-Waite deck is?
Oh, I knew that.
Okay, sorry.
But the differences between that first deck and the Rider-Waite deck, I do want to say, is that first deck with the minor arcana, we have the wands, cups, pentacles, and swords. But the minor arcana, we just had the amount of items in that card. So, for example, the 3 of wands, which is the 3 wands, the 3 of swords, which is the 3 swords. So it didn't have its own story in the card, whereas the Rider-Waite deck, they created a story for it. The Rider-Waite deck was a deck that was invented in the early 1900s, and this was created by Arthur Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith. And Arthur Waite was a part of the Order of the Golden Dawn. This is a Hermetic order that teaches ceremonial magic. So that's really key to understanding tarot, is that these cards, the Rider-Waite deck and a lot of the decks since then, these were invented for a ceremonial magician to work with throughout their initiation journey. So there's a lot of symbolism within those cards about magic and the ascension process by going through magic and learning rituals. So yes, the Rider-Waite deck was the deck that was invented in the early 1900s for ceremonial magicians. And what they were supposed to do was just take a look at the card, observe the symbolism. It's designed for you to pull things out from your subconscious. So that way you can have new revelations that are in correlation with the rituals that you're performing. Okay, And I think we can go ahead and move on because I mentioned ceremonial magic, so I think that it's really important for me to explain what ceremonial magic is. Magic is probably not exactly what y'all think it is, or what a lot of people think it is. Magic is, it's kind of hard to explain when somebody asks me, but I'll do my best. It's about consciousness, how it's broken down into several parts, and it's about purifying, strengthening these aspects of self and reintegrating. So we see this model here, and it looks like this geocentric model. It looks like all the planets revolving around the Earth, but that's not really what this is. The Earth is the four elements, which are the four aspects of your personal consciousness. So your mental body, your spiritual body, your emotional body, your physical body. These are the aspects of you and how you operate. Moving on from the earth energy in the center, that's the closest to you, the most dense aspect of your aura, the most dense aspect of you. Moving on from there, we have these planetary energies. These planetary energies are the way that you interact with the external reality. So your earth, your four elements are internal, and the planetary is external. And then moving on from there, we have the wheel of the zodiac. And that is about the cycle of life or the cycle of consciousness, also the cycle that the sun goes through throughout the year. And it's also the cycle that you go through as the microcosm of the macrocosm. You are divinity within a human body having this experience. You are consciousness, and this is how that consciousness operates. So not only is this chart really a breakdown of consciousness, it's also a path. And the path starts in the middle, so it starts with you working on yourself and you work on your internal world. And this sets up a very strong foundation to perform future magic. So after setting up this foundation, you work on these planetary energies, so they're the way that you approach reality. And then from there, you work on the zodiacal energies. The zodiac is broken down into the 36 deacons, and then that is also broken down into the 72 angels of Hashem. And that is the 72 angels. We can think of them like, you can think of them biblically like angels, but really they are just aspects of your consciousness. And when you work with one, you're working with a part of yourself, but you're also working on the external reality. Because when you change the internal aspects of self, you're changing the external. That's how magic really works. There's no difference between the internal and the external. You are the universe in a body. When you change one, you change the other. When you change the external, you change the internal, vice versa. So this is why, this is kind of the deeper meaning of things like voodoo. You know how when you have this voodoo doll and you're doing things to this doll and it's supposed to create something external, or you have an altar and you place things in certain places on the altar that represent different things. All of that is because this is an internal thing that you're doing. You're changing something within yourself by changing something within the external. And then performing magic in this way is about doing it the other way. You change the internal and the external changes. So, what does this have to do with Kabbalah? Let's move on to the next. Because that chart right there is exactly the same. Kabbalah is this ancient form of Jewish mysticism, and it contains this map, which is, you could think of it in several ways. This is a map of divinity. This is a map of God, a map of the universe. This is a map of you as the microcosm of the macrocosm. This is a map to divinity, and this is a map from divinity into material. I always try to stress this in any course that I teach or to anybody that I talk to, because I know that this stuff can get a little complex and some of it can be really woo-woo or not woo or really intellectual, you know what I mean? So this is not the truth. Kabbalah is not the truth. Tarot is not the truth. At least from what I found, no religion is the truth, no tradition is the truth, no this is the truth. All of these things are just the finger that points at the truth. And the truth is something that's here. It's you. You are the truth. Even in the Bible, Jesus, I am the light, I am the truth. That's that Tiferet energy, that golden sphere of energy in the center of your chest. Jesus lives in your heart. Jesus is the Son of God as you and that is associated with the Son. It's here in Jesus. The truth is you. It's no tradition, no religion. All of these things are things that are meant to guide you to yourself as being God within you. That's the truth. So, getting that out of the way, let's talk about the tree and how this operates. So I'm gonna run through the spheres on this tree, and I might go through this kind of quickly. So some of this might be a little confusing or a little it just might be a little complex, but if somebody has a question, I really don't mind answering it in the middle of this, it's fine, because it might be something that people need to know. So I'm going to run through these spheres on the tree. We have 10 spheres. The first sphere is called Kether. It's the white sphere at the top, and it means the crown. It is about divinity. It's about awareness. That is about the pure light of this thing that we call God or the universe. So this awareness is what you really are behind all of these other aspects of consciousness. This awareness splits into two. So we have the second sphere, Chakma, which is the gray sphere, and it means wisdom. Awareness splits into two. So we have the awareness, and then we have the wisdom that was spiraled out from that awareness, which the awareness spirals out some sort of desire, and the desire is externalized as wisdom. The next step is it becoming internalized. So we have Binah, the third sphere, the black sphere. This is associated with Saturn. Chakma, that gray sphere, was associated with the wheel of the zodiac. So Binah being understanding, that is the internal aspect of the wisdom. You gain wisdom straight from the source, and then it becomes internalized as understanding associated with Saturn. We cross this abyss called Da'ath. Da'ath is not a sphere on the tree of life. It doesn't count. It is the abyss. It's about detachment. Da'ath means knowledge. So this is actually the goal of this path. And it's also where this path is birthed from. It's birthed from nothing, no thing. And we can talk more about that later. We go into the fourth sphere called Chesed, and this is the blue sphere. This is associated with Jupiter. So for those of you who know about Jupiter, that is all about success, abundance, growth, the opportunities, it's the expansion. So we have Binah, that understanding, crossing the abyss, which is about knowledge. So if you have the knowledge and the courage to bring that understanding forth, it becomes successful or it expands. There's vision there. Then we have the opposite of that. The fifth sphere is Gebra, which means severity. It's associated with Mars. And this is about restriction, boundaries, limitations. So we are in this universe that has infinite potential, but as physical beings, we have certain limitations that we have to work through. We either break through those limitations or we have to work. That's one or the other. Gebra represents the limitations and the challenges that we face and the restriction, but it also represents the energy and the fire force needed to break through those challenges. So we have these two opposing forces, 4 and 5, Chesed and Gebra. This is our expansion, vision, and then also our restriction, and possibly the work needed to bring this creation forth. These two aspects find balance here within Tiferet, that sixth sphere, the yellow one at the center of the chest. Associated with the sun, this is about that Christ consciousness or the divinity that's within the self. It's the mediator, it's the link between earth and heaven, whatever it is you want to call this thing, the holy guardian angel, yourself, whatever you want to call it. That is this energy in the center of your chest. That represents your will, your consciousness, your conscious awareness. Moving from Tiferet, we go into Netzach, the seventh sphere, associated with Venus. It has to do with anything that Venus has to do with. So that is going to be love, beauty, music, art, emotions, passion. And then the eighth sphere, Pod, is your thoughts, anything to do with Mercury, learning, education, magic, skills, thoughts and communication. Moving from there into 9, this is Yesod. It means the foundation. And this is located at the pelvis. So this is the foundation for life. This is associated with the moon, the subconscious mind. You've all heard the subconscious creates reality. And it's through that we get the 10th sphere, Malkuth, which is the fruit of the tree of life. That represents physicality, anything in the 3D physical reality, and it's represented by the 4 elements. I went through that very quickly. It is much more complex than that. We could talk about this for like 5 hours and still only scratch the surface of this. But this is how divinity materializes. And then if we can look at this going from 10 to 1, we can see some sort of ascension process, getting yourself back in touch with that general nature and experiencing it, not just thinking about it, but actually having the experience of it. On the right side, that other graph, it's the same thing. We start in the middle with Malkuth, the 4 elements, and then going out from there, we have the planetary energies from 9 to 3. Banah is the last planet, Saturn. And then from there, we enter the realm of the zodiac, Chakma, which includes the deacons and the angels. And then from there, we reach something called the Virion, which is Kepler, or the crown, or the light of divinity, your awareness. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I do. I see you have Metatron on that same circle with Kether. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so if y'all know the story of Enoch, who ascends into heaven, he becomes an angel. He becomes the angel Metatron, which is associated with Kether, the awareness, the purity. That is also linked to this path. As you are a human, you are divinity, and as you move through your journey, your spiritual journey, you are becoming something more than you. And that's what that represents. Yeah.
The left chart, is that like related to chakras in any way?
You can attribute chakras to that, yeah. These are not, as you go through your path in magic, what you're doing is you're creating spheres within the body. So this is just a representation. So like I was saying before, this isn't exactly the truth, but it's a diagram to represent the truth of the self. So as you go through your path in magic, if magic is something that you decide to get into, specifically ceremonial magic, you will start creating these spheres within the body. You will be creating fields in the sacred. So, I think that I covered everything. Oh, well, I do want to talk quickly about the path in magic, going from 10 to 1. And we start in Malkuth, so we are working on the 4 elements of the 4 aspects of self. Your mental body, emotional, spiritual, and physical. Those are the 4 elements. That's up, fire, water, earth, and air. Once we build that stability within the self, the next thing that we do is we enter into this Yesod area. Yesod is that subconscious layer. It is also representing the astral. So this is where we really get into spirituality, and we're dealing with our psychic awareness, and we develop our independence. We kind of go into hermit mode here. The people that we used to resonate with fall away. Then from Yesod, we step into Pod, and that is about learning. So we're going internal, or we're internalizing knowledge. So maybe we're taking classes, or we're practicing magic, or we're really throwing ourselves into the path, but maybe in a little bit more of an intellectual way. And we are internalizing the information. Netzach is associated with Venus, and this is gonna be more external. So we are externalizing the stuff that we have learned. But here, we are moving forward through our passion and our willpower and our love for doing whatever it is that we're here to do. Then we eventually meet Tiferet. And that is that sun energy. We find our authenticity, we find who we are, we actually meet our divine energy within the self and use it to our best ability, to our best judgment. We're about to learn more about judgment and discernment and weighing these two scales with Gebra and Josette, because we are learning how to balance severity with mercy, how to balance restriction with expansion. And that's a really important skill to learn that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to do that. So moving from Tiferet, we go into Gebra, which is about severity. And we might see our challenges revealed to us. We might see our restrictions revealed to us, which were always there, or an event happens that highlights it. And we gain that energy to break through that barrier, break through that obstacle. And on the other side of that is just an expansion. This is where you find success. This is where you find your growth and expansion. Going from there, we cross something called the Ankh that we were talking about, the abyss. Really what that's about is the dissolution of self, the dissolution of the ego. So within Chesed, as you're going through this expansion state, there is this key message to stop identifying with the physical so much, to stop identifying so much with the thoughts, the psychological self, the body. And as we stop identifying with all of these things, we become very present. We experience something that is our awareness. We experience our awareness from the outside, from that observer aspect. That takes us into Binah. Binah is the understanding of life and death, the death of the ego, the death of the self. We are constantly dying and being reborn all the time. Whether we have ego deaths, even if you have an ego death, the ego comes back. The whole point of this path is to purify. Transform. Binah is the last planet until we enter Chakma, which is the zodiac. And that's a little too heavy to get into at this moment, but just know that it's about the machinery of the universe and the cycle that the universe goes through and how we are the microcosm of that. We can get into all of the little details there, as you can see with the way that is defined. And then eventually you reach Gemini, which is that awareness. And it's something that you experience briefly, but then as you realize that awareness has a desire to create, and you are now able to hold that desire through all of these spheres in a very conscious way. Quick thing on Kether is, you all have had the experience, if you created anything, if you ever had an idea that kind of came out of nowhere and you didn't act on it, and then maybe a month later or a week later, you see that idea everywhere, or you see somebody else created that thing. Has anybody had that experience? That is your divine energy, that awareness that is behind your consciousness, the awareness that is behind your psychological self, your personality. It is the same as mine. It's the same as everyone who's in this room, this planet. The consciousness that's behind all stars, all galaxies, everything. That consciousness is what we call God, and its desire is to create. And if it does not create through you, if it doesn't fully come through you and it's not grounded in the physical, it will come through someone else. It will. That is that Kether energy. All right, so let's move on to the next screen. So this is how this relates to tarot. We have these 4 worlds of Kabbalah, which divides these, it divides up the street. And that first world is absolute. It's the archetypal world. It's associated with fire. This world is going to be a little bit more abstract, and that's what I was talking about, where you have that desire to create something that comes from that awareness, and it's externalized as wisdom. and then internalize this understanding when you think, oh wow, this is a good idea, it just came out of nowhere. That is your fire. Fire is about creation, transformation, and spirituality. And it is where our desire to create comes from. Now, if knowledge is not there or the courage to create is not there, then that idea dies there through you. I mean, it might be created for somebody else, but it'll go ahead and stop there through you. If it crosses that abyss of knowledge, we enter the creative world, which is represented by water and the cups in tarot. And this is about the creation of life or the creation of really anything. Just said, we have our expansion, our vision for what we want to create. And then Gebra, we have our restrictions, our limitations, energy to overcome them. And Tiferet, we have that essence, which is the reflection of Kether, that original desire. The essence of that creation is there in the heart, in the creative form. Then we enter something called the formative world, which is air, represented by the swords. This is our mental aspects. This is called the psychological triangle. This is where the pain body exists. This is why when you take a look at the suit of the swords, they're all very, not all, but most of those cards are very dark. Like the 3 of swords, the 9, the 10, the 8, they all have some sort of theme in those cards because this is where the pain body exists. So we have our thoughts with Had, we have our feelings with Netzah, and we have our subconscious mind with Yasad. And those 3 things are very difficult things to move through. That's where a lot of our pain exists there. That's why the swords look like they do. This is about your attention and awareness, the way that you disidentify with the personality, which will lead you into those high level zones. Then we have Earth, or Malkuth. This is the manifested world, and this is represented by the pentacles. And this is the 4 elements there within Earth, or within the physicalities. Earth has to do with your finances. It has to do with your career, the way that you make money. It has to do with your health, your environment, how your environment is creating your internal world too. So these are 4 worlds of Kabbalah, and this is how those 4 suits correspond with those. If you look, each world of Kabbalah has its own tree of life, 10 spheres. We have 10 cards of each suit, ace through 10. Then we have the 4 court cards of each suit. The 4 court cards are also the 4 worlds within that world of Kabbalah. So I know that that gets a little meta and gets confusing, but that's how this is broken down. We have 22 major arcana cards. We have 22 paths in the tree of life. This tree of life is very old, and it was very obvious that that first deck from the 1400s was reflecting this tree of life. So this is where these cards come from.
If that was an accidental reflection, it was very
There
intentional.
was intention. These people who created these cards were definitely capitalists. And then also with the Rider-Waite deck specifically, with that connection with ceremonial magic, they use those buttons. That was intentional too. So when you're observing the Rider-Waite deck, you're absolutely observing the path of ceremonial magic, and that's very intentional. Yeah, I think that I've covered all of that, so we can move on to the next slide. So now that I've described the tree of life and I've talked about the major arcana, how it corresponds to the paths on the tree, but actually I want to look at this a little differently. If we split the 22 cards in half, have 11 cards, the 11 first cards, and then the second half, it's 11 cards. If we include the Ath as a sphere on the tree of life, this fits perfectly with these spheres also. So let's take a look at this, going from 10 to 1, actually. So 10, we have the Wheel of Fortune corresponding with Malkuth. This is showing us the Wheel of Life, the Wheel of Physicalities, and how it starts over. This can also be about reincarnation, or the Wheel of Samsara. We have the 4 4 elements in the 4 corners of the card represented by the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac. I don't have time to get into the 4 fixed signs of the zodiac, but just know that they are representing the fullness of those 4 elements. Stepping out from this physicality world, or letting the world dictate where your future goes, that's what the Wheel of Fortune represents. It can represent good fortune, because it can land where where it's gonna land. You don't really know what's gonna happen, but you're not in control. That's the point of the card, is that you're not in control. This whole path is about gaining control of yourself. It's finding the personal power. Moving out from that Wheel of Fortune, the next part of the path is the hermit. Remember, Yesod is about the subconscious mind, getting in touch with those psychic energies. There's this level of independence that you gain within Yesod, and that is perfectly represented there by the hermit, card number 9. Card number 8 is strength. And that is corresponding with Hod on the tree of life. Hod is your communication, your thoughts, the intellectual self, your skills that you're learning. The strength card is about when a challenge is presented to you and you're able to disidentify with that psychological mind. So disidentify with the thoughts, because something happens to us and we become reactive. That is the psychological self of the body getting conflicted. That's the lion card. And the woman is gently closing the mouth of that lion, because she represents Kether. She's wearing white. She is the awareness stepping in and observing the psychological self from the outside. And that closes that mouth of that lion. It closes that reaction. That is where you find the inner strength and inner resilience to go through your obstacles. Then we have the external aspect of that, which is the chariot. And the chariot moves forward, corresponding with Netzach. He moves forward with his will and his passion. The chariot also corresponds with Cancer. And Cancer is linked to the moon. And this has a lot to do with your emotions. And it has to do with the way that those emotions create your reality. So the chariot is using that to his advantage. Going from the chariot into the Lovers. So anybody see the correlation there between the Lovers and the tree of life? That's different. We have the sun raising in that background. We have the archangel Raphael. Raphael is the angel of the we have the Lovers, the masculine and the feminine on their side. The tree of life, that white pillar is the masculine pillar, the black pillar is the feminine pillar. And then in the middle we have Tiferet. So you can see that perfectly reflected there in the Lovers side, while it corresponds there with Tiferet. So this is where you meet that higher self, where you find that divinity within the self. It's also about how you commit. The Lovers is about commitment. You commit to yourself, you commit to your path, you commit to your consciousness, commit to your awakening. This is, so the sun represents your consciousness. The moon, Yesod, represents your subconsciousness. So we bubble things up from the shadows, the shadow work. We bubble things up from the shadows. We shine the light of consciousness, awareness on it, and it becomes one. That is the alchemical marriage. The two become one, it just becomes light. That's the secret there with the alchemy of the Lovers. Moving from there into the Hierophant, we're moving into Gevurah, more severe energy. The Hierophant can represent this very, it represents this wisdom figure, a religious figure. The Hierophant has to do with religion in the 3 modalities of creation, which is the birthing of something, the ordering of something, the destruction or ultimate death of something, which creates a birthing again. And that makes sense with it corresponding with Gevurah being about the strength and the fire to break down obstacles. Breaking down those obstacles, it was kind of like this death process, which eventually results in some sort of birth. So this is about the wisdom of that. And that is internalized. We become externalized in the emperor. So we're moving forward with that force energy, corresponding with Aries, Aries also about that fire energy and breaking through obstacles or starting something. Aries is the first sun, so yeah. Here with the Emperor card, we see our success. And we are expanding, and we are ruling our kingdom. The kingdom can be your environment, it could be the people that you talk to on a regular basis, it could be your friends, your family, or it could be something even bigger. If you become something bigger, you have your kingdom. So you have to be mindful for what you say, for the things that come out of your mouth. You have to be mindful for the way that, you create reality, because people are listening to the energies around you. They're listening. Then we cross this abyss. The Fool card is placed here with the abyss. And the Fool is card number 0. Makes sense. It's with the abyss, which is has no number. The Fool is about presence. The Fool lives fully here in the present moment. The Fool's not worried about what's going on in the past. The Fool's not worried about the cliff that they're about to dance off of. Yeah, they're cool. They're right here in the moment. They're fine. They're enjoying the moment. And sometimes that gets you a lot farther. You stay present with yourself. You don't abandon yourself. The off is about that detachment. It's about not identifying so hard with the psychological self, the physical reality. You're just here, you're just existing, and you're taking life for what it is and you're flowing with it. The Fool also might be on the search for knowledge, but is not worried about the path to get there, not worried about the difficulties that are required. Okay, so we move through that detachment into the Empress. The Empress is corresponding with the knob, which means understanding. The Empress understands the universe, understands the process of life and death. The Empress is pregnant, so she's giving birth to her reality. This is the first sphere on the feminine pillar. And this is where the idea becomes internalized or pregnant, and it is either birthed or not through knowledge into the Emperor, so the expansion and success. So the Empress is representing what is going on internally, what is going on with the understanding of something. We have the external part of that, the High Priestess, and that sounds a little counterintuitive because the High Priestess is about passivity. But the High Priestess has that veil behind her, and if you look closely at that veil, it's the tree of life. That veil. And we have the feminine pillar, the masculine pillar, the High Priestess herself is the middle pillar. Yeah, so it becomes really obvious when you take a look at these cards that this is heavily influenced by the Baha. And ceremonial magic, of course, with the magician card, the one, so magic, but with that High Priestess, she has that veil behind her, and does anybody know what's behind the veil? The wizard, right. No, it's water. It's water. It's the subconscious mind. It is emotions. It's the subconscious. You can see the moon energy all over this water. It's the subconscious, the astral energies. The High Priestess is about peeking behind that veil and bubbling things up to the surface, becoming conscious of them. It represents the wisdom that's hidden under the surface. So peeking behind that curtain, yes, you find that the wizard is you. You are the wizard. Moving from there into the magician, which represents you as that wizard. So the magician, he has one hand holding a scepter. This is not a wand. The wand's on the altar. We have the wand of sword and pentacle on the altar. He is holding a scepter, power, and this is a white scepter representing Kether, which is awareness. The magician is using the awareness of divinity and funneling it through his consciousness, and he's pointing at the ground, growing that garden. He's growing not through the actual physical reality. The magician corresponds with Mercury. So this is about your thoughts or your mental body and your skills. So the magician uses those things rather than identifying with the personality, but he uses those things to direct the awareness to direct the consciousness to any reality. So the magician is about how the thoughts create reality, but it's not your thoughts that create the reality, it's the awareness, it's that ever energy. The thoughts are the tool or the conduit for direction. So that is half of the major arcana next to the tree of light. I'm not gonna go into the second half of the major arcana. Oh, yes, there's a question.
Will, on the high priestess card. On the black column, it says B, the white column says J.
They are the pillars of Boaz and Yakin. So Boaz, if we blow that up larger at the bottom there of the tree of life, that black pillar, pillar of Boaz, the pillar of severity, and the white pillar is Yakin, the pillar of mercy, the masculine. And this is not about male and female, or positive or negative in the sense of good and bad. It's not any of that. This is about the two sides of us, which is really about external and internal, force and form. They're just represented by masculine and feminine, but it is not about male. So, as I was saying, each suit corresponds with a world, and we can see that entire tree. So you can look at the suit of the wands as the world of absolute. So this is about desire and passion, the passion to create. It's also about authenticity, finding the authentic self. And you can do that same thing that we just did with the major arcana. Look at it from 10 to 1, or you can also look at it from 1 to 10. Either way. The cards on the left might tell a specific story, the cards on the right might tell a specific story, the cards on the middle might. It all depends. One thing that you'll notice here is that if you go from 10 to 1, it's really obvious, but you're dropping things, you're getting rid of wands the whole way up your spiritual ascension. The 10 of wands represents the burden of the physical reality. So it's holding on to the spiritual energy here in the physical reality. You have the base towards the ground, corresponding with number 9 being about independence. You have the 9 of wands. The person is stepping out, even though they're scared and limited. They're still being brave and going against the grain of society. The 8 corresponding with time, communication, and intellect. These wands are moving through the air and they travel very quickly. So rapid growth. The 7 corresponding with Netzach, we have defensiveness, we have our emotions maybe getting the best of us over the years. 6 is finding our authenticity and being celebrated for it, embodying that Tiferet energy. All the 5s are difficult. All the 5s are difficult in tarot because they correspond with Gebra, which is about severity, our challenges, and the energy needed to overcome them. So this might be challenges with collaboration with other people's related energies. Or we have that stability with 4, but through that stability is expansion. We have a gateway. This could be viewed as the gateway through Da'at into Banat, or a gateway through that dissolution of self. The 3 of wands, I always look at this card kind of like a blank canvas. It just feels like anything can be created here in this card. There's this reflection and also seeing these ships, if you looked at it larger, these ships are going off to sail. Corresponding with Banat, it is about the understanding of creation here in this case. 2, the wisdom. The person in the card is holding the world in their hands. Everything is very fertile in this card. There's vision and possibilities. And then with Tether, we have that something coming from nothing, that awareness, that divine energy, something comes from nothing. The hand comes out of the violence.
Well, in my head, I believe I know what the wand is, but could you define what the wand is?
The wand is this, so magicians make their wands out of trees. which represents the divine nature or the divine growth of something in the physical. And it comes from energy. So trees grow from the water and fertile soil and the sun, the energy of the sun. All of those things they have to do with the four elements too. But that energy, it is about the desire for creation. The tree wants to grow. And that's the same thing for you. But that universal energy wants to grow.
So it's is the wand also viewed as not just something that is taken and represents those elements, and then the will of the user comes through it, or does it self-possess power, energy?
Good question. I think it does.
Okay,
Because that's the time.
I had it in my head a certain way, but I'm really curious.
But it's about the relationship between the two. If it's you,
Okay.
possess power and energy. And so does it. You're
Okay.
working together.
Okay,
It's a good question.
thank you.
All right, we can move on to again, same thing. With the wands, as that is fire is represented by the upright triangle, I felt like it was very natural to view it going from 10 to 1. Water is represented by the inverted triangle, so I feel like it's very natural to view it going from 1 to 10. The creative world is about fulfillment, your emotions. Wands usually have to do with relationships, but in this case, we are looking at the internal side of that. How do those relationships make you feel? You know, what is the fulfillment you're seeking throughout any kind of pleasures of life? You look at the left side of the tree, we see this obvious story being told, with the 3 being the celebration, the pleasures of life, 5 being the overindulgence, the disparity, maybe addictions, the depression, and then the 8 being the walking away from those things in order to find something better. So sometimes you'll see a direct story on one side of the tree, and that is that pillar of severity, the internal pillar, where we learn a lot of lessons. But if you were to go through this, I'm not gonna do this just because of time, but you can definitely take these cards and put them next to the tree of life next to it and just ask yourself, what is the story? And really piece together the story in your own way. You'll probably find things that I would have never thought about. In my tarot course, this is what we do. And we all meditate on this together, and people pull out things that nobody else sees, and we all have these amazing revelations together as a group, so it's really, really beneficial. We can move on to the swords. So remember, I said the swords are very difficult and very dark. This is about the psychological world, the theme body. Swords are your communication, your awareness, your focus, but also is your thoughts and anxieties. So the more that we have in the 10, it kills us. It's a dead person. I don't mean literally, but we have to eat something until it's dead. Moving up from there, we have the disparity within our subconscious mind. Yes, on the 9 of swords. And then the 8, we have these anxieties surrounding us, and we are blindfolding ourselves. That means we are, what's the best way to say this? This is an initiation. This is consensual. The woman in the card chooses to be blindfolded and tied up. And what that represents is aligning one sense to hone the senses of the others. So this would be the process of starting to observe the thoughts. And when we are observing the thoughts and observing the anxieties, they kind of dissipate, but it's a decision that we're making. The 7, the person is taking the thoughts that serve them, the anxieties that might serve them for the future, and they are running with them, and they're leaving the rest. They're leaving the rest. So again, we're dropping baggage or pulling up. 6, we're finding that authenticity of the self for moving forward. Interesting, within this card, we have a masculine figure, a feminine figure, and an inner child or a child. And I think this is representing the 3 pillars here in this card, just like the Lover's card. And we have the swords being the forefront of the boat or the forefront of the mind. But the secret is they are like prison bars, you can see through them, you know, you can see past things and things. The swords are all about awareness, focus, attention, and presence. The more present that you are, the more that you disidentify from these thoughts, you are dropping baggage. 5 will represent the Gebra energies. Yes.
On in 6.
Yes.
The water on the right of the boat is waving down as opposed to the one on the left. So does that mean that the leaving
So
baggage,
the baggage
yeah,
from-
comfort, okay, and then we're going into calmer waters.
yeah, that's exactly right. And then the 5 have unfair advantages or oppression. Gebra also has to do with oppression as we are looking at the path. 5 might show us where we are enslaving ourselves or where our thoughts are enslaving ourselves. So we can see that within 5 too. The 4, we have rest. I mentioned this earlier, that there is this significance of chesed being present, really embodying that presence, and the world opens up for you, the expansiveness happens within that presence. That's where we find the success, and that's also where we will find the dissolution of self, and we cross that abyss. And when we cross that abyss, we can see the 3 of swords, which appears to be difficult. But what's happening is logic is overruling the emotions. The logic is piercing those emotions. And we are moving through something and making the best decision. But the 3 of swords is not as dark as the 9 or the 10. This is a much lighter energy. We're getting to the heart of the real truth, with that grief, whatever that means to us, whatever those anxieties were. We're still dropping baggage, but this is much lighter. Those heavier energies at the bottom of the tree. Then we have the 2, and this, like the high priestess, we have a veiled figure. The woman is blindfolded. The high priestess is veiled. She has that veil behind her. Behind that veil is water. Here we can see that water. There's clarity happening here with this 2 of swords, and we have that that lunar energy. What is happening in that subconscious mind is being bubbled up to the surface, and her position is representing that focus and clarity, and it's receiving that light straight from Cather to be able to bring what it is that Cather wants to bring into the physical reality. Then we reach that Ace of Swords, which represents that awareness and clarity. And we can even see the crown on it. Cather means crown. And let's move on to the, oh yes, I'm sorry.
But her eyes are coming.
Yes. That it represents, just like the 8 of Swords, the ability to detach or to align one sense to gain more power in those senses. Yeah, she doesn't need to see what's in front of her, she can sense. And then the pentacles, again, we are representing this upside down triangle, so it seems more intuitive to read this going from 1 to 10 versus 10 to 1. But you can still look at it either way. This is about the attainment of materialism, maybe, or bringing something into actual physical reality, your environment, your health, all of those things. The Ace will represent some sort of new opportunity. The 2, we have the balance of the 2 and the wisdom to be able to, I guess, discern too. That, and knowing that sometimes life is up, or sometimes we have more money, or the flow is coming in easier, and sometimes it's the other way around. The 3 is going to be the internal aspect, understanding creation. There's a lot of symbolism within the 3 of Pentacles. I wish I could get into it here. If you want to take my tarot course, we'll dive into it. But there is that understanding and there's an emphasis on collaboration and communication here as well. Or corresponding with just said, we have that expansiveness, but here we kind of see the opposite of that. The person in the card is holding on to their money. They're not wanting to let go. They might be prideful of their success. They want more. They want to hold on to what they have. But this is also like the two, we have to realize that there's balance. That you have it so you can let it go and it will come back to you. And that's the secret of being grounded without Pentacles, just that there's more without anybody. Yes.
Does that also, does the 4 also, signify fear?
Yeah.
So.
So they're losing, yeah. Then the
They have
five,
to let go.
yeah, they have to let go. They have to let go and let it flow through versus holding on to it. The 5 will be, I feel like the 5, you can look at this a few different ways, but it could be what happens if you do hold on to it, or what happens if you hold on to it so tight and you lose it. But the 5 is poverty, or all the 5s are difficult, not that Gebra energy. We have difficulties with health, we have difficulties with money, difficulties with just the physicalities of life, maybe not having with it having to do with our environment. You also see the tree of life kind of on the glass, but we have the first 5 spheres of the tree of life there. And this is representing turning towards somebody who can help you, not being so prideful and walking away. That this is a church here, and this could be like not turning your back on just spirituality in general, really. Which will lead us into that 6. And that is the balance of harmony and money, being generous, letting money actually flow through you. The 7, we have the reflection on the hard work of whatever this thing is that we're trying to obtain. There's emotion involved and passion involved. And then the 8, we're using our skills, we're using that high energy learning to actually do the work and create something that we enjoy, and the work is almost finished. 9, with that Yasad energy, this is that foundation that is birthing the outcome. The person in this card is surrounded by luxury. This is about finding the luxury and the outcome in the present moment. So not focusing on things that's going to happen in the future, but focus on the beauty that we have here and now. Being grateful, yeah, being grateful and being grateful for this moment, and what you do have, and being grateful for creating that you are creating your reality. 10, you can see it clear as day. That is the entire tree of life in that card. We can see that. So this is the Malkuth of Malkuth, if y'all caught that. So this is the creation of the creation. Everything has that tree of life energy in everything. So even the physical creation that you have created, whether this is a song, whether this is a business, whether this is a conversation with somebody, or you did a tarot reading for somebody, that's your mouth that was going through it. It contains the tree of life energies in it. So it contains the essence that goes on to create more and creates that ripple effect throughout society. So this could be, if it's a tarot reading, you just told somebody something that could change the course of their life. It could change something within their consciousness. And that is your legacy. The 10 is about legacy. And it can be about generational wealth. It can be one interpret it as money, but it's really about just the legacy of what you have created for everyone.
Do the pinnacles have the 5-pointed star?
Oh, the 5-pointed star is a symbol for the 4 elements. So the top one is spirit, and you can count spirit as an element, but spirit is spirit. Spirit is ether energy, and it is being funneled into these other 4 points, which are the 4 elements. So also, when you invert them, you have that upside down pentagram that represents spirit being turned on its head, and it represents putting materialism over. So that's why you have that dark or satanic thing. Okay. And then it's perfect. We are right here at 1 o'clock. I do have 3 courses. You
I
have a
have one
question?
more question, yeah,
Yeah.
you skipped the other 11 major.
I did.
Yeah,
I
so I
did
was
because
curious.
of time.
Just time.
But the other 11 major arcana cards, that's gonna be more macrocosmic, so looking at society as a whole, beliefs into the process. It's really interesting when you look at that, the last 11 cards.
Where does death fall on the spectrum?
But not, so with where the Empress was, the understanding of creation and death. So death is there, right after the abyss and the death of the ego, the dissolution, celebrating death. Which is a rebirth happening in
How long are your classes?
okay, my Kabbalah course is just 3 nights for 2 hours each class. The tarot course is for 5 weeks, 2 classes a week, about an hour and a half. Tarot course, I highly recommend it because we do tarot and Kabbalah at the same time. Ceremonial magic is 8 weeks, just 1 class a week. But we're actually going through the process in the ritualistic way. So we won't be talking as much about tarot and Kabbalah, it'll be really focused on doing ritualism.
And your classes are in person?
They are online, they're through Zoom, because most of my students are in other states or in Europe. Wherever, so
What time of day?
they're usually at night, like at 6, from 6 to 7:30, 6 to 8. And sometimes I'll throw in Saturdays to make it more accommodating. But they're all recorded and they'll be sent to you, so if you do miss them, it's okay.
And then outstanding job of explaining all of that.
Thank you, I hope so, I know it's a lot of information, so I was just trying to talk really fast.
Outstanding.